It started with a slap that echoed off the marble steps of a federal courthouse, the kind of sound that splits morning air and makes time hold its breath. A police officer thought he was teaching a lesson to a black woman he'd already decided didn't belong. But minutes later, that same woman would walk into the courtroom, take the bench, and make the entire system answer for itself. This isn't just a story about one bad cop. It's about what happens when power meets the wrong woman, and justice finally remembers her name. That morning in Philadelphia looked like any other. Sunlight climbing glass towers, lawyers clutching coffee, and a woman in a gray coat walking toward her day's work. But the closer she got to the courthouse, the clearer it became. This wasn't going to be another ordinary case. It would be the case. Because before justice could speak in that courtroom, it had to survive on the steps outside. Morning light poured down the marble steps of the James A. Byrne Courthouse, washing the city in pale gold. Commuters drifted through Independence Mall, coffee cups steaming, buses exhaling at the curb. Philadelphia was waking up slow and sure, the way old cities do, brick and steel stretching under the sun. Judge Maya Ellis moved through that morning like part of its rhythm. Civilian clothes, gray wool coat, low heels clicking against the stone. A leather briefcase hung from her hand. Inside were sealed orders, bench memos, the day's suppression motions she'd signed herself. Every paper in it carried her name and authority. Her phone buzzed once, a voice note from Samira, her daughter. "Mom, remember, breathe before battle. Keep your soft where it's safe, and your steel where it counts." The message made Maya smile. She tucked the phone away. She didn't see the man waiting by the pillar until he stepped into the light. "Morning, ma'am," said Officer Mark Reynolds, his tone already threaded with mockery. The badge on his chest caught the sunlight like a warning. "Well, look at that. Another professional with a knockoff briefcase." He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the heavy confidence of someone who'd never been contradicted. Behind him, 2 other officers drifted closer. Tyler Grady, phone already in hand, and Lucas Chen, quiet, watchful, barely out of academy years. "This ain't the benefits office," Reynolds said, blocking her path. "You lost?" Maya stopped 2 steps below him. "Officer, I'm here on official business. Would you like to see—" "The only business you've got," he cut in, "is cuffs." Grady chuckled. "Here we go." Again. For a second, Maya thought about pushing past him, explaining who she was, but she saw it in his eyes. That flash of contempt that didn't come from confusion. It came from conviction. He didn't want her words. He wanted the story in his head to stay true. Reynolds moved first. His open palm cracked across her face so hard the sound bounced off the marble facade. The briefcase burst open, orders, memos, judicial seals scattering down the steps like confetti at the wrong parade. "Hands where I can see them," he barked, even as his fingers wrapped around her throat, slamming her against the stone. "Scum like you doesn't belong in a house of justice." Maya's vision flickered. She heard Grady's voice, half laughing, half excited. "Another one who thinks she's above the rules." Chen crouched, flipping through the spilled pages. "These forgeries are getting slick," he said. A clerk across the plaza froze, phone halfway to his ear, then turned away. A defense lawyer with a brief under her arm hesitated, then kept walking. The city's hum swallowed everything. Reynolds wrenched Maya's wrists behind her, snapping the cuffs until the metal bit into skin. "Resisting arrest," he muttered. "Let's take a little walk." Maya said nothing. She was breathing through the sting, memorizing every face, every sound, every word. She counted silently, 1, 2, 3, each number marking another security camera overhead. As they pulled her inside, Grady's phone recorded the scene, timestamp blinking red, 0019. Inside the lobby, the air turned colder. Fluorescent lights hummed. Reynolds strutted past the metal detectors like a man entering his own house. "Got a live one," He called to the desk sergeant. Caught her casing the courthouse. Charges? The sergeant asked, bored. Attempted breach of federal property, resisting, assault on an officer, fraudulent documents. Same old, the sergeant murmured, stamping a form. Same old, Reynolds echoed with a grin. They pushed Maya toward a bench in a side room. She sat down slowly, wrists aching, cheek burning where his hand had landed. On the far wall, a muted TV showed the morning news, another report about police accountability hearings in the state legislature. The irony scraped against her ribs. In the security office above, Rafael Ortiz, the courthouse IT director, noticed a motion alert on the main entrance feed. He tapped a key and flagged the footage for retention, routine protocol. He didn't yet know that file would become the evidence of the year. Reynolds filled out the incident report like a man telling a familiar bedtime story. Suspect was acting suspiciously near courthouse steps, appeared to be carrying forged legal documents, became combative when questioned, used minimal force necessary to subdue. His pen moved quick, confident. Maya watched, eyes calm. In her mind, she filed away each phrase. Forged, combative, minimal force. She'd seen those words on 1,000 transcripts. They were the grammar of systemic rot, polished to sound like duty. Sign here, the sergeant said, sliding the form toward Reynolds. Always do, Reynolds replied. Across the room, bailiff Andre Coleman paused as he walked by, taking a long look at the woman on the bench. Something about her profile tugged at him. He'd seen that calm before, but he couldn't place it. Maya's phone had been taken, but she had memorized every number she needed years ago. When they finally allowed her one call, she spoke softly. Chief Judge Price's chambers, please. Yes, this is an urgent preservation request. Courthouse entrance cameras between 8:45 and 9:15. All feeds. Yes, include the body cam cloud backups. Her voice stayed even. Each word was measured, deliberate, like moves on a chessboard she'd been playing all her life. Outside the booking area, Grady was replaying the video for Chen. You got her face when he hit her? Damn, that's clear. Chen nodded, uneasy. He didn't have to go that hard. Reynolds smirked. Hard's how you teach respect. Don't worry, she'll plead out by lunch. In the holding cell, Maya flexed her fingers, trying to bring blood back to her hands. Her mind spun through case law. Terry v. Ohio, Miranda v. Arizona, Brady v. Maryland. She knew the precedents better than anyone in the building. She had cited them from the bench hundreds of times. Now she was the case. Through the narrow window, she saw the top of her own courtroom dome gleaming in sunlight. 20 feet away, her name was etched in bronze. The Honorable Maya L. Ellis, presiding. She smiled, a small private smile that made the guard shift uneasily. Reynolds thought he'd won. He didn't see the cameras. He didn't see the system shifting its weight. He didn't see that the woman sitting quietly behind those bars was the one person in Philadelphia with the power to end his career, his freedom, and his illusion of impunity. As the door clanged shut, Maya closed her eyes, steadying her breath the way Samira had told her to. Soft where it's safe, steel where it counts. And somewhere above, in a tangle of cables and code, the footage waited, patient and perfect, already recording the first crack in the story Mark Reynolds had just written. The fluorescent hum in the processing suite turned every second into a long, bright scrape. It was always cold in there, even on warm days. Recycled air, old tile, a low ceiling that made the room feel like a pressure cooker for people and paper. A strip of laminated instructions in English and Spanish was taped to the wall at an angle. Remove belts, remove jewelry, cooperate. The kind of sign nobody reads until they're living inside it. They parked Maya on a metal bench under a camera bubble that blinked a tiny green dot. Her wrists throbbed in rhythm with her pulse, the cuffs like small suns radiating from bone to skin. Reynolds stood at the counter with his shoulders set and his voice pitched just so, calm, authoritative, well-practiced. The desk sergeant didn't bother to look up for more than a second. "Name unknown," Reynolds said, pen flicking. "Refused to present valid identification, possible forged documents." He spoke the words like he was laying bricks, stacking them clean and straight. "Attempted breach of federal property, resisted, assaulted an officer." The sergeant slid a booking sheet across the desk with a rubbery sigh. "Same charges as last week?" "Plus fraud," Reynolds said. She had a briefcase full of high-end forgeries. Looked legit at a glance. "Uh-huh." The sergeant stamped a box without reading it. "Evidence logged?" "Bagged and tagged," Reynolds replied. He hadn't bagged anything. Grady had scooped papers into a plastic bin like a raccoon stealing from a picnic, talking to his phone the whole time. "Chain of custody intake after I finish here." "Copy." 2 chairs over, a public defender conferred with a young man in a zip hoodie, cap twisting between nervous hands. On the TV above them, captions scrolled, "Proposed police discipline reforms face opposition." The camera cut to a panel of union reps in gray suits, chins lifted like shields. Grady sauntered in, thumbs tapping, the glow of his screen reflected in his pupils. "You want me to airdrop the clip, boss?" He didn't whisper. He wanted the room to know he had a clip. Rooms like this never care until they do. "Send it to the case file," Reynolds said without looking. "Make sure the part where she lunges is in frame." "There is no lunge," Chen said flatly, voice soft, headache low. "She didn't lunge." Reynolds turned his head slightly. "You see me testifying yet?" "No." "Then you didn't see anything yet." Across the room, Maya slowed her breathing the way she told witnesses to do when they were about to say something that would change their lives. In through the nose. Out slow. Count backwards by 5s. Name the things you can see. A scuffed floor, a busted chair leg, a red binder with a cracked spine, a coffee ring. Name the things you can hear. The HVAC cough, a printer spitting out labels, the click of Grady's case, the scratch of Reynolds's pen. Her mind lined up a row of cases like chess pieces. Terry v. Ohio. What did he have exactly to stop her on a public sidewalk? Thin air in a story. Miranda v. Arizona. When had anyone advised her of anything? They hadn't. They'd hit her first. Brady v. Maryland. If there's exculpatory video, it must be preserved. Giglio v. United States. If a witness in uniform lies as a habit, the habit belongs in the sunlight. The holding room door hissed open. A woman with a no-nonsense bob and a navy suit stepped through with a legal pad. Caroline Pierce, assistant U.S. attorney. Lines of long hours hovered under her eyes, but her suit fit like a promise and her heels made no sound on tile. "Officer Reynolds," Pierce said after a quick scan of the room, "walk me through it. Time 200 mamas." He straightened. "At approximately 0845, I observed the subject loitering at the main steps, behavior consistent with casing, carrying what appeared to be forged documents. When I initiated a lawful inquiry, she refused to produce ID, became verbally aggressive, attempted to push past me into the building. Minimum force applied to prevent a breach. Partners Grady and Chen present." Pierce nodded, checking invisible boxes. "Body cam?" "Malfunction," Reynolds said, clean as a cut. "We're troubleshooting. Partner captured partial." "Show me," Pierce said. Grady's clip was jittery and tight, starting mid-argument, Reynolds' shoulder blocking most of the frame. Maya's face flashed, then blurred as the angle jumped. Pierce watched with the professional patience of someone who knew video could be a Rorschach. When it ended, she looked from the phone to Maya, then back, like measuring tape. "Any priors?" Pierce asked. Unknown subject, Reynolds said again, as if the words themselves were control. Refused to identify, claimed she had official business. Pierce's eyes sharpened a millimeter. What kind? She didn't say. Said we could look at her credentials later. Pierce wrote 3 words. Credential claim, deny. All right, bag the papers, chain of custody tight, tag the phone clip, I'll draft intake, then we get this in front of a judge on the overflow docket, open and shut. Always is, Reynolds said. A hallway rookie peeked in, eager to belong. Open and shut? Reynolds smirked. You'll see. The kid vanished. Maya watched the door swing and settle. Somewhere a printer jammed and a clerk smacked it twice. Life went on until it didn't. Upstairs in the sealed hum of the Security Operations Center, Rafael Ortiz stood over a daytime constellation of monitors. He rolled camera 07 back and watched the slap in high def, flinched like he'd been hit. He flagged CAM 07, CAM 08, CAM 12, mirrored them to a RAID and to secure cloud. The way the policy book says you're supposed to, even when no one is watching. We really saving all that? You'll choke the server, a guard muttered. Raphael didn't look away. We save what we need to save. You need to save half the courthouse? Today, Raphael said. Yeah. Back in processing, a guard held out a desk phone. You get 1 call. Thank you, Maya said, voice steady. She recited a number from memory, and in a careful office whisper on the other end, she spoke like a metronome. This is Maya Ellis. Please inform Chief Judge Price of an immediate need for a comprehensive preservation order. All exterior cameras between 8:45 and 9:15. Body camera cloud backups for all officers on courthouse detail. Anybody who recorded anything on a personal phone within that time window, yes, include metadata. Yes, I'm all right. No, I'm not kidding. Grady leaned, grin tilted, eyes dull. You hear that? Big talk. Chen stared at a hairline crack traveling toward a drain. Reynolds sauntered to Maya's bench like a teacher at the front of class. You can make all the calls you want, he said. Still walking out of here with an arrest record might teach you something you missed the first time around. What's that? Maya asked. Not to learn, but for the record. Consequences. The sergeant slid the incident report to Pierce for intake. She skimmed, lips trying on a phrase, capped her pen, and turned on a heel. Let's get her in front of a judge. Overflow courtroom. Kent's covering the morning docket. If we time it right, she's arraigned and processed before lunch. A uniform walked Maya down a hallway that smelled like old coffee and new disinfectant. The cuffs bit. The air narrowed and cooled by inches. A bulletin board held a faded softball flyer, a ball with sunglasses, cool justice scrawled underneath. It should have been funny. It wasn't. 2 clerks whispered by the elevator. Saw the whole thing. She tried to push in. Did she, the other asked, weary-wise, or did he push a story? Don't get yourself in trouble. Too late, I work here. By the overflow courtroom, bailiff Andre Coleman stood posted, a man who had carried doors and rooms for 2 decades. His look lasted half a second too long for a stranger. Recognition flickered like a match cupped in wind. Problem? The escorting officer asked. No, Andre said, voice with a riverbed in it. No problem. They sat, Maya, at the defense table in a cramped, borrowed room where acting Judge Harold Kent did morning triage. Tidy bench, tighter schedule, hair white at the temples, readers on a chain he never used. The courtroom was the color of old oatmeal. Folding chairs squeaked like mice when anyone shifted. Pierce assembled her argument with clean labels and ruthless economy. Reynolds took his practiced stance, shoulders square, chin set, hands resting lightly on a belt that carried more than it should. Grady dropped into the row behind Pierce and silenced his phone with exaggerated care. Chen hovered in the corner like he wished he were a wall. "Next matter," Judge Kent said. "State versus Jane Doe." The Jane Doe cooled the room by a degree. A small bureaucratic cruelty with years of practice. Pierce rose. "Your Honor, the defendant attempted to access restricted areas, refused identification, became combative, and assaulted Officer Reynolds during a lawful detention. Additionally, she possessed documents that appear to be forged legal materials intended to facilitate fraud." Kent lifted an eyebrow, gestured without looking up. "Officer." Reynolds testified in the voice he saved for microphones and judges. Low, warm, competent. Suspicious behavior. Professional approach. Patience. Escalation by the suspect. Necessary force. Technical malfunction. You could feel the walls lean his way. Habit-made architecture. When it was Maya's turn, she did not uncork a speech. She chose sentences like a surgeon chooses instruments. "Your Honor, a person walking on a public sidewalk toward a courthouse entrance is lawfully present. If the Commonwealth intends to convert a morning walk into casing, I ask for the factual basis. I also request an immediate preservation order for the exterior camera feeds between 8:45 and 9:15 and for the automated cloud backups from all body-worn cameras on courthouse detail. Additionally, I request preservation of any mobile video recorded by officers present on scene." "Objection," Pierce snapped, crisp as a page tear. "Pro se defendants cannot commandeer discovery at arraignment." Maya turned just enough to address only the bench. "Brady obligates preservation of exculpatory material the government knows or should know about. Giglio obligates disclosure of impeachment material relevant to testifying officers. We can litigate the timeline later. Today, preservation is the minimum to avoid spoliation." The stenographer's fingers slowed, then found the rhythm again. Judge Kent's eyes lifted over his notes for the first time. Something in the room turned on a hinge. "Do you have identification?" Kent asked, hating the trick of the question. Maya looked at the cuffs, then at Andre. "If the court permits, my personal effects include an access card, a parking placard assigned to this building, and a federal identification card. If the court grants a short recess for verification, the confusion will clear." Judge Kent hesitated, then decided. 15 minutes. Ms. Pierce, ensure all relevant surveillance is preserved pending further order. Officer Reynolds, do not leave the building." The gavel tap was small, almost apologetic. Bodies and binders shuffled. "Don't touch anything, don't talk to anyone," Pierce muttered to Reynolds. He nodded like silence was his native language. Andre stepped close, voice low, for her alone. "Ma'am," he said, the word cracking at the edges, "do you need—" "Andre," she said, and his name landed like a stone in a quiet pond. He gave one nod. His hand shook on the keyring. Down the hall, administrative staff slipped in with the quick gravity of people carrying news before the news becomes public. Chief Judge Naomi Price entered, face set, eyes clear, and took a seat in the front row like laying a cornerstone. In the back, Rafael Ortiz appeared with a scuffed hard case labeled CAM 7, CAM 08, Body Cloud. He looked like a man carrying a heart for transplant. No one announced the wind had shifted. It just had. An unison exhale, a swallowed cough. Grady finally turned his phone face down. Somewhere, a clerk whispered, "You're not gonna believe this." And another answered, "I already do." 15 minutes isn't long until it is the longest 15 of your life. For Reynolds, it stretched like wire. For Chen, it pooled like cold water in his shoes. For Pierce, it ticked like a courtroom clock when reputation is the thing at stake. For Maya, the minutes were clean. She used them the way you use a whetstone. Andre returned, breath short, garment bag zipped to the collar, a small wooden box tucked under his arm. He didn't meet Reynolds' eyes. In a side room, the zipper sang, thin metal traveling down. The robe slid out, heavy and familiar. She laid it across a chair back like an old friend arriving after a bad night. The wooden box opened with a soft click. A gavel on velvet, engraving catching honest light. Justice is blind, but she sees all. Thank you, Maya said. Always, Judge, Andre answered. When they stepped back into the courtroom, the people who needed to be there were already there. Pierce stood a little too straight, Reynolds stayed a little too still. Chen kept to the corner. Grady watched a point above the bench like bargaining with an empty sky. The room had remembered itself, and though no one said it out loud, everybody felt it. The oxygen evening out, something like balance taking a seat. The clerk cleared his throat. All rise. It sounded almost like a prayer. Not for mercy, but for order. Not the kind of order Reynolds had thrown around like a baton, but the kind that builds a room and then holds it steady. The room stood. The room sat. The room held its breath. Acting Judge Harold Kent slid into place behind the borrowed bench with the stiff poise of a man doing a precise job at the wrong desk. He adjusted his readers, then didn't put them on. A single fluorescent tube buzzed above his head, the sound a thin electrical nerve. Call the matter, he said. The clerk's voice carried a familiar resignation. Commonwealth versus Jane Doe. Maya felt the syllables land on her like a cardboard mask. She kept her eyes forward and her breathing even. Andre took one quiet step to her left shoulder, where bailiffs stand when they're ready to catch a fall. Pierce rose, file-tabbed and color-coded with the kind of intention that made juries relax. Somebody had done their homework. Your Honor, Pierce began, neutral and practiced, the Commonwealth will call Officer Mark Reynolds. Reynolds walked to the stand the way men in uniforms learn to walk. Measured, squared, a public sculpture of credibility. The oath washed over him like routine water. Do you swear, so help you God? He swore, the way a man swears he's been here before. Officer, Pierce said, laying a foundation with soft questions. State your name and assignment for the record. Mark Reynolds, he said, voice pitched low to sound like a seatbelt clicks. Courthouse security liaison, city police unit assigned to federal perimeter. Directing your attention to approximately 8:45 this morning, where were you stationed? Main steps, eastern approach. What did you observe? He didn't look at Maya. He looked at a point 6 inches above Pierce's shoulder, where officers are trained to look so that no one says they stared at a defendant like prey. Observed the subject loitering at the top of the steps, behavior consistent with reconnaissance, scanning, pacing, checking sightlines, carrying a high-end case inconsistent with overall presentation. When I initiated a lawful inquiry, the subject became evasive, refused to present ID, attempted to push past me. I used minimal force to prevent a breach. Minimal force, Pierce repeated, the phrase climbing onto the transcript like a well-behaved cat. Describe it. Open hand guidance and standard restraints. No baton, no takedown beyond what was necessary. Pierce nodded once, as if clicking a Lego into place. Did you observe any documents in the defendant's possession? Numerous, he said. High-quality forgeries, legal papers, judicial-looking seals, internal-looking memos. Why do you say judicial-looking? They looked real to an untrained eye, but content was inconsistent. Names, case numbers, formatting appeared meant for impersonation or fraud. The court reporter's keys ticked. Rain on a tin awning. Judge Kent leaned back, hands folded. The picture of procedural calm. Take testimony, evaluate, move the line along. Any body-worn camera footage? Pierce asked, already stepping over the hole. Technical malfunction, Reynolds said, regretful, unfazed. We're troubleshooting. Was any footage captured by other means? Partner recorded partial on a personal device. It corroborates her aggression and my restraint. Pierce let corroborates float for the judge like an olive branch. No further questions at this time. Cross? Judge Kent asked, tone saying, not really, we both know how this goes. Maya rose, deciding how much to reveal and how soon. The cuffs flashed dull metal. Andre shifted an inch to keep the chain from catching. Officer Reynolds, she said even, how many exterior cameras cover the main steps you referenced? Not sure of the exact number. More than one? Yes. More than 5? Possibly. You testified your body-worn camera malfunctioned. Are you aware of the automated cloud backup protocol that mirrors recordings at fixed intervals regardless of local device status? I don't handle IT. Understood, but you know it exists. I know they back up, yes. And you reported the malfunction immediately? Yes. To whom? Sergeant on duty. Name? Sergeant Keating. The room felt the brakes squeal under the story, gently, almost musically, like a bow on a string. No further questions, Maya said, because you don't empty the toolbox before the nails arrive. Pierce called Officer Tyler Grady. His uniform looked pressed by a YouTube tutorial and a prayer. His eyes kept drifting toward the phone he wasn't touching. Were you present this morning? Yes, ma'am. What did you observe? Subject acting cagey, scoping the entrance. Reynolds approached professionally. Subject got loud, tried to shoulder past. We secured the situation. Did you observe an assault? Yes, he said too quickly. She swung on him. Did you capture any part on your phone? I did, partial. In your view, does it reflect aggressive conduct? It does. On cross, Maya asked only, your recording begins mid-encounter, not first contact? Yes. Angle shows mostly Reynolds' shoulder? Yes. Capture audio of everything? Not everything. So it is, in your words, partial. Right. Pierce called Officer Lucas Chen. He moved like hoping air could make him disappear. Present? Yes. Behavior suspicious? Yes. Officer professional? Yes. Defendant aggressive? Yes. Documents suspicious? Yes. The words fit awkwardly. Too big in places, too small in others. On cross, silence did the work, before Maya asked, how long on courthouse detail? 4 months. Stopped people walking toward the courthouse before entry, more than 5? Yes. More than 10? Maybe. How often did reports label clothes or bags inconsistent with socioeconomic status? Objection, Pierce. Relevance. Pattern and credibility, Maya said softly. Overruled, Judge Kent. Chen searched for a door his conscience could fit through. It's been used before. It didn't look like much. One phrase tugged like a loose thread, but the room felt the stitch give. Pierce resumed, scaffolding around 3 uniforms. Prepared to proceed with arraignment and bail, defendant has no identification, refuses to cooperate, presents a flight risk. Maya stood, small motions, no wasted angles. Your Honor, a person walking toward a public entrance is not casing a bank, and the First Amendment isn't revoked by proximity to marble. The sidewalk before a courthouse is a traditional public forum. The Commonwealth hasn't articulated reasonable suspicion beyond buzzwords. Objection, argument, Pierce snapped. Noted, Kent said, palm down, keeping them at a simmer. Do you have identification today? I do. It's in my personal effects. Access card issued by this building, a parking placard with my name and title, and a federal identification card with my photograph. If court security allows retrieval, the court can verify. And the documents at time of arrest? Kent asked carefully. They are judicial memoranda and orders bearing my name and seal. The seals will match the ones on file. A ripple. Clerks whispering, a defense lawyer's eyebrows lifting, the young hallway officer rising on his toes. Kent looked at Pierce with a face that asked what his mouth wouldn't risk. "Very well," he said. "Recess 15 minutes to verify identity and to issue a preservation order covering all exterior cameras between 8:45 and 9:15, any body-worn camera backups, and any recordings made by officers on personal devices during that time. Counsel, do not discuss this case in the hallway. Officer Reynolds, remain available." The gavel tap sounded like a knuckle on a table before grace. The room rose, shuffled, murmured. Someone took a slow breath, like wind through blinds. As people trickled toward the door, Grady whispered to Chen, "She's playing. They can talk pretty, that's all." Chen listened to something no one else could hear. A story changing shape inside a room. Andre guided Maya to the side room. 2 bright lights, metal chair. He said nothing. Hands clasped so tight his knuckles whitened. Maya flexed her fingers and breathed. Down the corridor, Pierce walked with Reynolds at her shoulder. Questions carrying a quiet razoring beneath politeness. "You understand the preservation order applies to any recordings in your possession, personal or otherwise?" "Yes." "You reported your malfunction immediately?" "I told Keating." "You'll produce that report. If you didn't file it yet, you'll file it now. Timestamp accurate." In security operations, Raphael finished mirroring feeds, slid a portable drive into its case. Then a second. Belt and suspenders. Chain of custody in duplicate. Time in block numbers. Signature. CAM-07 froze on a still that could hang in a museum titled "What Happened Was Not What He Said." The raised hand, the open mouth mid-slur, papers like white birds taking off wrong. A bailiff knocked. "They want it downstairs." "They can want a lot of things," Raphael said, then picked up both drives and walked carefully, as if carrying water to a place that hadn't had any in a long time. The 15 minutes skeletonized themselves. No flesh, just bone, a frame where something else would be built. When Judge Kent returned, he didn't look at Pierce or Reynolds first. He looked at Chief Judge Price, still, not nodding, not frowning. He looked at Andre, neutral that only a uniform can make look like prayer. "We're back on the record," Kent said, words clicking into place. "If the court directs," Maya said, polite to the end, "the bailiff can return my personal effects for review at the bench." "Do that," Kent told Andre, who moved with the efficiency of a man who knew which footsteps would echo too loudly. The access card hit the bench first. Photo, name, barcode, chip glint, the parking placard, Ellis. District Judge made Pierce's hand twitch on her pad. The federal identification card made 2 clerks in the second row grip sleeves. Kent's mouth opened, closed. He adjusted his readers and used them this time. "Counsel," he said to Pierce, very gently, "we're going to proceed with caution." Raphael approached with the drives. Chief Judge Price herself took them. She didn't need to, but she did. It sent a message to the air. This is not paperwork. This is evidence. We are not passers-by. We are responsible. From behind Pierce, Grady whispered, "We can still fix this," like a kid bargaining with a broken vase. "Stop talking," Pierce said, without moving her lips. Officer Reynolds looked at the bench, then at Maya, and for the first time his confidence thinned enough to show the scaffolding inside. Guesswork, habit, expectation that a room translates uniform into truth. He flashed on an image he hadn't let himself imagine. His own voice recorded not for heroism, but for history, played back in a room that didn't want to love him anymore. Judge Kent cleared his throat, pulling process around the moment the way you pull a coat around yourself in wind. "We'll take another brief recess," he said, less to stall than to set the bones right. "All rise," the clerk intoned. But nobody really sat in the heart. You could feel the entire building coming to its feet. From the basement where the coffee tasted like burned paper to the top floor where windows cut the sky into rectangular truths. Maya stood carefully, cuffs chiming once like a tiny bell. She didn't look at Reynolds or Pierce or Chen or Grady. She looked at the bench, then at Chief Judge Price, then at Andre, who answered with the smallest nod a human being can make and still have it count as a yes. Somewhere, Samira's voice note echoed, "Keep your soft where it's safe and your steel where it counts." She felt the robe waiting only a room away, and the gavel asleep in its box like a word she hadn't spoken yet today. The judge stepped through the door. The room emptied into the hallway into the whispering river of clerks and lawyers, the river into a deeper quiet. The kind before thunder teaches the sky how to speak. Maya let out a breath she'd been holding since the marble steps. The next one she took felt like drawing a line across a map and saying, "Here." And the courthouse, old and made of so many stories, prepared itself to hear the truth from its own walls. The bailiff's knock was a low drum on the door that separated the holding room from the thin world of procedure. Andre opened it with his shoulder, careful hands guarding the garment bag like it was a living thing. The wooden box rode under his arm. In the fluorescent light, the zipper teeth flashed. Maya stood. The cuffs winked dull. Andre looked to the officer posted in the corner, and the officer looked at Andre's face and decided, for reasons he would never quite be able to articulate, to pretend he hadn't noticed the way the world was about to move. Andre set the bag on the chair and eased the box onto the table. He stepped back, palms open, like he was making space for a ritual. Maybe he was. "Thank you," Maya said. "Yes, you're..." He stopped, swallowed, started over. "Yes." She unzipped the bag. The robe unfurled in long, dark lines, heavy with a familiar weight, the way true things carry their own gravity. She slid it on, and the fabric found her shoulders the way a home finds a returning body. The gold piping flashed. Nothing gaudy, just a small, stern promise of ceremony. She breathed and felt the bruise under the collarbone, proof, not ornament. The wooden box clicked open under her thumb. The gavel rested in velvet like a compass. Its engraving caught a cold light. Justice is blind, but she sees all. Samira's voice note came back, warm and quick in the ear of memory. "Keep your soft where it's safe, and your steel where it counts." She closed the box and held the gavel in her palm. The balance was exact. "Bailiff," she said, the old timbre sliding into place on the word. "When we step out, announce me with full protocol." Andre nodded. It wasn't theatrical, it was correct. In the corridor, a low-pressure weather system of whispers moved along the crown molding, clerks texting, a defense attorney, calling someone who'd wanted a reason to believe in Tuesday mornings again, a paralegal holding her breath like a votive. A door opened at the far end and Chief Judge Naomi Price took her seat in the front row of the overflow courtroom without ceremony, her presence quietly reorganizing the molecules in the air. At counsel table, Caroline Pierce stacked her notes in a new order, left to right, smallest on top. The way she always did when she was about to let the record do the work and keep her face still. Officer Reynolds stood, then sat, then stood again, as if his body couldn't decide whether to fight or freeze. Grady tapped a finger on his thigh until he noticed, then pressed both hands flat. Chen folded into the corner by the bubbled paint. He looked like the idea of a person. The clerk's voice carried into the corridor. "All rise," Andre's voice followed. Bigger, older, from a deeper place in the building. "All rise. Court is now in session." He stepped back from the doorway and found a second wind only voices get when they're calling something true into the room. The Honorable Judge Maya L. Ellis presiding. It wasn't thunder that hit. It was something quieter and heavier. like a long, high bell closing the day. The room rose. The room tried not to look shocked. The room failed. Maya stepped through the door, robe settling with a hush. She didn't hurry, she didn't dawdle. She walked like someone who had made this exact trip more times than she could count, and had never forgotten what it cost to make a place like this mean anything. The bruise sat at the robe's collar, a small violet moon. She took the bench, set the wooden box on the shelf, and laid the gavel beside it. "Be seated," she said. The word "be" had a weight. The word "seated" found the chair under every person and made them notice it. "On the record," she added, and the stenographer's keys took a breath and began their work, as if grateful for a job with shape. She looked at the room in quadrants, not to show power, but to inventory it. Pierce controlled, Reynolds flushing and pale by turns, Grady rigid with the wrong anticipation, Chen still as a borrowed coat on a hook, Chief Judge Price anchored and unblinking, Rafael Ortiz just inside the door with two labeled drives clutched like instruments, the gallery, clerks, lawyers, families, and the rookie who had whispered "open and shut," every face turning toward the bench like sunflowers in a surprised field. "Officer Reynolds," Maya said, voice even but tuned to carry, "remain standing." He shot to his feet, spine snapping straight from muscle memory he would come to resent. She set a hand on a thin stack of fresh transcript pages. The paper edges were sharp as winter air. "Approximately 1 hour ago, you testified in this courtroom. Among other statements, you told the Commonwealth and this court that the subject attempted to push past me and that you used minimal force. You further testified that your body camera malfunctioned and that you are troubleshooting. Do you stand by that testimony?" Reynolds opened his mouth, the sound in the key of a man who could feel a floor slant. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good," Maya said, almost gently. "Then this will be simple." She nodded to Raphael. He stepped forward with the first drive like a baton in a relay no one had trained for. Chief Judge Price checked the chain of custody, then passed it to the bench. The second drive waited at the ready. "Mr. Ortiz," Maya said, "we'll start with camera 7, the main steps." Raphael connected the feed. The monitor hummed to life, gray rectangles sharpening into morning. The gallery leaned forward without speaking. Ordinary seconds, a Phillies hoodie photo, a clerk with a tote, pigeons arguing the gutter. Then the auto track widened. Maya's approach, the gray coat, the briefcase, the calm. Timestamp 46:09. Reynolds stepped from behind the pillar like a pop-out figure. He moved to block the stairs. On the video, Maya lifted a hand, inches, offering a card. Reynolds' hand came first, open, fast, brutal. The slap rang in the speakers, rippling the gallery like a pebble in shallow water. Paper took flight, clear, not cinematic, stinging the eyes. His second movement was worse. Hand at her throat, the slam, words the mic could almost catch. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "Jesus." Grady swallowed air. Chen went a chalk shade you don't find in nature. Maya let the image etch itself, hands open, hand closing, orders scattering. She lifted her palm. Raphael paused the frame. Perfect geometry. The angle of Reynolds' arm, the marble lines, the stamped orders, the violence against a building that engraved equal justice under law on its bones. "Officer Reynolds," she said, calm. "Do you see any push past in the first seconds of this video?" "The angle," he began. "We have more angles," Maya said. "You'll see them. You will also see why technical malfunction is not an alibi in a district that mirrors body-worn camera footage to secure cloud at 60-second intervals. Your Honor, Mr. Ortiz, proceed to the body-worn camera cloud backup." A chest-level perspective shivered onto the screen. The audio was better, crueler. Reynolds' breath, fabric on mic, then, clear as a bell rung in a bad church, his voice. "Look at this uppity one. Time to teach a lesson." The sentence wasn't long, it was enough. The rookie flinched like slapped by a ghost. A woman in the gallery cried into both hands. "Do you recall saying those words, officer?" "Your Honor, this is..." "Your voice, your perspective, your hands, your lesson." Raphael scrubbed forward, the slam from the officer's chest, the head against stone, papers sliding like fish, the choke, unambiguous. "Officer Grady," Maya said, eyes on the screen, "you testified your partial phone video corroborated the defendant's aggression and Officer Reynolds' restraint. Would you like to revise?" Grady's mouth opened, his answer arrived mangled. "No, Your Honor," he said, words with elbows. "Officer Chen, you testified to suspicious behavior and a professional response. Would you like to revise?" "Yes," he said, voice threadbare. "Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to correct. You will have an opportunity. For now, remain seated." Camera 8, closer angle. Reynolds' face in crisp cameo, mouth shaping House of Justice like he owned the deed, palm meeting cheek, the tiny recoil in his eyes only men proud of hurting know. "That will suffice. Mr. Ortiz, maintain files in secure evidentiary storage." "Chief Judge Price, the court notes your emergency preservation order is in effect and functioning." Naomi inclined her head once. "Not a bow," the way granite agrees. "Officer Reynolds," Maya said, "you attempted to make this room believe a stranger tried to breach a courthouse, and you protected it. You attempted to make this room believe your camera failed and your memory triumphed. You attempted to make this room believe that when you struck and choked a woman on these steps, the only lesson being taught was hers. You were mistaken about the student. You were mistaken about the teacher." She turned a transcript page. "You swore to tell the truth, and you didn't. You did more than fail. You lied. And then you invited 2 colleagues to thread their lives through yours, a pattern covering too many reports, too many mornings." "Before we continue, identity." Andre brought her effects. She lifted each to the light. Access card, parking placard, Ellis District Judge, Federal ID. The reporter typed each word like stitching skin. "My name is Maya L. Ellis. I am a United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. I have presided in this building for 12 years. The orders this officer called forged were written by me, signed by me, sealed by the clerk of this court. The seal is a promise to the public, not a decoration for an arrest report." She turned slightly to Pierce. "Ms. Pierce, the Commonwealth's case rests on sworn testimony contradicted by video and audio captured by this courthouse and by the officers themselves. This court will not proceed to arraignment on a narrative that is, charitably, untethered to the evidence." Pierce's pen hovered, then wrote one word beside Reynolds' name, Giglio. "Officer Reynolds," Maya said softly, "you told me this morning that some people only understand authority when it's backed by force. I understand authority when it is backed by law, when it is carried with humility, when it protects the vulnerable instead of inventing threats to justify itself. Your Honor, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference." She lifted the gavel, weight finding the center. "Immediate orders. First, the United States Marshal Service will place Officers Reynolds, Grady, and Chen on administrative detainer pending federal review. Second, the clerk will transmit preserved footage and today's transcript to the U.S. Attorney's Office Civil Rights Section and the Department of Justice for independent charging decisions. Third, the court orders immediate review of cases in which these officers' testimony was material for Giglio disclosure and post-conviction screening. Fourth, Any attempt to alter, destroy, or delay transmission of digital evidence will be treated as obstruction. She looked last to Chen. He spoke, shame shaped like relief. I saw what they saw. I heard what they heard. I didn't stop it. I said suspicious because that's the word that fits on the line. But it wasn't. She wasn't. I'm sorry. The record reflects your statement, Maya said. Accountability is not a group project. Each person carries their own. Reynolds bent at the waist, younger, meaner, scared. Judge, please. This building is full of people who have said please to men with weapons and uniforms, she said. The thing about please is it's meant to be a prelude to grace. What you did on those steps left no room for grace. She spoke first, because sometimes the word is the strike. For the record, no one is above the law, not me, not you, not the badge, not the title. Law is not a costume, it is a vow. Gavel strike. In light of the evidence, the court refers Officer Reynolds to state and federal authorities for felony assault, assault on a federal judicial officer, deprivation of rights under color of law, 18 U.S.C. Sexicker 242, and perjury. Officers Grady and Chen are referred for potential perjury and conspiracy, with Chen's on-record correction noted for charging discretion. Marshal, Maya said. A deputy stepped from the wall, cuffs clinked, familiar and new. Reynolds looked down at metal, then up at Maya, like he'd just learned a second language the hard way. Grady followed, stiff. Chen walked like a man who had put a rock down. Miss Pierce, Maya said, bringing it back to the work. File notice regarding open matters involving these officers and confer with defense counsel in affected cases within 14 days. Mr. Ortiz, the court commends your adherence to protocol and chain of custody integrity. Just doing my job, Your Honor. Keep doing it. She rested the gavel on its side and looked once more before the next thing the law requires. Outside, afternoon angled in. Buses sighed. Pigeons argued their endless argument. Court is in recess, she said. The clerk called it. The room stood. Benches and shoes braided into a soft, ragged applause. Not for a person, but for a possibility. A building living up to its engraving. Maya stepped down. Up close, the bruise was human and finite, already fading at the edges. Andre opened the side door. For a heartbeat, he looked at her like a man looks at a lighthouse. She touched his forearm once, thank you, without words, and moved past. In the corridor, Pierce waited, pad pressed to her ribs. Judge, she said, formal and spare, we'll do the right thing moving forward. Do it backward, too, Maya said, where it counts. Raphael leaned from the wall, drives back in the case, second mirrors already whirring somewhere you couldn't hear. Judge, we've got clean copies, read only. If anybody tries to touch the originals, I'll know. I trust you, Maya said. He smiled awkwardly and made himself scarce. In the little room where the robe had waited, she didn't take it off. She closed the wooden box around the gavel and rested her palm on the lid. Through the thin wall, the building talked. Heels on tile, quiet voices, a copier catching its breath. The ache in her wrists eased a fraction. She tipped her head back, eyes closed, and counted. 1, 2, 3. Not the cameras this time. The people. She opened her eyes. The room came back. Cheap light, paint scuffs, a leaning coat hook. She breathed once more and stepped into the hall. The courthouse didn't look different, but it held itself differently, like a person who had remembered their own name. And somewhere down the stairwell, distant but coming closer, you could hear the sound of a door unlocking on a room that had been closed too long. The applause had broken like weather and then thinned into the low, practical hum of a courthouse relearning its job. Doors opened and shut. Phones lit. Elevators sighed. What waited now wasn't spectacle. It was process with teeth. By the time Maya returned to the bench, the marshals had moved Reynolds, Grady, and Chen to holding. Pierce's office had spun up a small army, line prosecutors, a senior counsel from the civil rights section, and ethics liaison. Chief Judge Price remained in the front row, hands folded. The still point the room kept orbiting. Maya set the gavel down and spoke like a flight captain guiding a plane through clear air after rough sky. Back on the record, for clarity, I am the victim in the alleged assaults. As such, I will not preside over any criminal prosecution. What I will do is secure the record, issue protective orders, and ensure handoff to the appropriate authorities without delay or contamination. No drama, no echo, just the clean edges of a to-do list that mattered. First, she said, the United States Attorney's Office will file a criminal complaint before a duty magistrate judge within the hour. The marshals will transfer custody for initial appearances. Second, this court issues a standing order that the City Police Department and Courthouse Liaison Unit preserve all relevant communications from 6 a.m. to noon today. Texts, emails, dispatcher logs, internal chat platforms, personal devices used in the course of duty, subject to inspection by federal investigators. Third, the clerk shall provide certified copies of today's transcript and video exhibits to the U.S. Department of Justice and the Pennsylvania Attorney General. Raphael lifted a hand halfway, the way a precise man signals a precise thing. Mirrors are confirmed, Your Honor. Read-only clones already in off-site storage. Hash values recorded. Thank you, Mr. Ortiz, Maya said. Please file your chain of custody affidavits under seal. She turned slightly, addressing the room beyond the counsel tables, the people whose lives were the reason the building existed. If you witness the morning's events on the steps, this court asks you to provide statements to federal investigators. You are protected. This record will not be rewritten. Then she looked to Pierce. Ms. Pierce, update for the record? Pierce stood, weighing every word like a coin she'd be asked to account for. We are coordinating with Maine Justice. A federal complaint under 18 U.S.C. Secker 1111 and FAR 242 is being drafted as we speak. State charges for aggravated assault and perjury will be coordinated with the Commonwealth. We've already instructed our trial lawyers to assemble Giglio lists and to identify any cases where these officers' credibility was material. Notices will go out to defense counsel. Good, Maya said. When the duty magistrate is assigned, this court will transmit the entire evidentiary packet. She reached for the transcript stack again, fingers steady. The bruise pulsed under the robe collar, present, not triumphant. Finally, one more order. An independent compliance officer from our court's Office of the Circuit Executive will audit our perimeter procedures with recommendations for training, signage, and liaison protocols. We will not build re-engraved plaques over rotten habits. Understood, Pierce said. And Ms. Pierce, Maya added, voice smoothing down to something personal that still belonged on the record. When you review those past cases, don't just check the boxes. Sit with them. If someone did time on the back of lies, I want you to feel that before you file the next paper. Pierce's jaw flexed. Yes, Judge. The door at the back opened. A marshal leaned in, 2 fingers on his earpiece. Magistrate Judge Monroe is ready downstairs, he announced. Initial appearances in 20. Very well, Maya said. We'll recess. Counsel, do not delay the transfer. She gave the gavel a single tight rap. The room stood. The sound of shoes was softer now. Not reverent exactly, but careful, like people walking through a museum where the art might change them if they let it. Down in the Warren, where the concrete remembered every winter, the initial appearances happened fast because they were supposed to. Identities confirmed, counsel appointed, rights explained. The duty magistrate, kind, unsentimental, a calendar that did not tolerate theatrics, listened to the complaint, scanned the exhibits, and fixed her eyes on Reynolds. "Government's position on detention?" she asked. A senior AUSA from the Civil Rights section rose. "Serious risk of obstruction, Your Honor, given the defendant's access to internal systems and the nature of the alleged conduct. The lead defendant's conduct occurred on federal property and targeted a sitting Article III judge performing judicial duties. We seek detention pending a preliminary hearing." Reynolds' lawyer, private counsel on a frantic retainer, argued flight risk wasn't present, that his client's service record deserved weight, that this has all gotten very hot very fast. The right argument, furniture in a burning room. The magistrate held her hands still on the bench, the way people do when they don't want anyone to see them clench. Given the video evidence, the integrity risks, and the credible allegations of perjury by multiple officers, I find clear and convincing evidence no combination of conditions will reasonably assure the safety of the community and the integrity of this proceeding. Detained. Grady went pale, then red. Chen looked at the floor, then the ceiling, then nowhere at all. Their appointed counsel asked for separate hearings and got a date and a warning. Do not contact potential witnesses. Do not touch a file you wouldn't be proud to show your mother. By the time the marshal's doors clanged, the day had shifted again. It wasn't a movie. It was paperwork and consequences in the same outfit. Back upstairs, the building's bloodstream adjusted. Clerks whispered without being gossipy. A janitor watched the big monitor replay silent excerpts of KM07 while mopping with the slow care of a man washing a wound. The rookie who'd said, "Open and shut," earlier stood with his back to a pillar and practiced a sentence until he could say it out loud to a sergeant later. "I saw it wrong first. I need to write that down right." Andre found Maya in chambers, robe still on, a bottle of water sweating on the desk. The sunlight had swung to a new angle, the city in deeper relief. "You good, Judge?" he asked, yes, the word good holding multitudes. "I am what the job asked me to be," she said, then let her expression soften. "I'm okay, Andre." He nodded once. "Chief says there's press out front." "I'm sure there is," Maya said. "Imani should field them." As if cued, Imani Brooks appeared, sharp suit, press lanyard, iPad glowing with bullet points. "Judge Ellis, I'll lead a briefing on process, not outcome. Confirm preservation orders, transfers, independence of charging, no statements about the merits. You okay with a short line from you about faith in the system's ability to correct itself?" Maya thought of that line the way a surgeon thinks about scar tissue, honest but not the same as the original. "One line," she agreed. "No adverbs." "Copy," Imani said, professional and real at the same time. They walked into the corridor. A few steps from the door, Maya slowed. "Imani," she said low, "don't let them turn this into a hero story about me. If they need a hero, point them to the record. Point them to Raphael. Point them to Andre. Point them to a process that worked today because we forced it to." "Copy," Imani said again. "Perfect." In the lobby, microphones lifted like a meadow of metal flowers. Imani stepped to the podium first. "We'll keep this tight," she began. "Today, the court secured evidence, issued preservation orders, and transferred custody to the appropriate authorities. A magistrate judge has ordered detention pending preliminary proceedings. We are expanding our review of credibility disclosures. We respect the process. We respect the people." Maya stepped beside her for the agreed sentence. Cameras clicked, lenses blinked. She looked not at reporters, but at ordinary Philadelphians behind them. The man in a SEPTA jacket, the grandmother in orthopedic sneakers, the law student holding a notebook like a life preserver. "Courts are not perfect," she said, "but the law is not a rumor. Today it spoke for itself." Questions shouted. Imani lifted a hand, smooth and firm. "No further comment at this time." As they turned to go, a woman at the back said softly, almost to herself, "About time, not approval," Relief's cousin with a casserole and no small talk. The rest of the day divided into scenes that didn't need headlines to matter. A paralegal pulled case numbers linked to Reynolds' beat, built a spreadsheet that would keep a public defender up all night and maybe free someone by morning. A sergeant in the liaison unit stared at his own text string, memes, slang, lazy contempt, and felt like a man holding a lit match over a room full of fumes. He put the phone down. He walked to Internal Affairs. He knocked. Caroline Pierce sat in a glass box of an office, the city's low skyline beyond her shoulder, and began dictating a memo that tasted like copper. Effective immediately, our office will suspend reliance on testimony from Officers Mark Reynolds, Tyler Grady, and Lucas Chen in any pending matter. We will notify relevant defense counsel. We will review closed convictions for integrity concerns. We will update our Giglio databases and train line attorneys on confirmation bias protocols. Down in the evidence locker, Raphael labeled a box with the spare handwriting of a man who doesn't perform for himself. Burn steps, 10:08 to 10:21. Preserved. He slid it onto a shelf where the cold air felt like a vow. He taped a warning, "Do not open without court order." And because he'd been at this a long time, he placed a second identical box 2 shelves down, decoy labels for the clever. In a cafeteria corner, the rookie sat with a public defender he knew from hallway nods. "I want to make a statement," he said low. "I don't want to be the guy who saw something and then waited to see where the wind blew." "Then we'll get you to the right people," the defender said. "And hey, good choice." On a bench outside, a grandmother in a floral blouse pressed 2 oatmeal raisin cookies into Andre's palm. "For your pocket, you looked out." He flushed, mumbled thanks, tucked them away like contraband you earned. Late afternoon, the courtroom was quiet enough to hear the heating system think. Maya took the bench in an empty room. Sometimes you sit where a thing happened to understand the shape it made. The door opened on a soft hinge. Chief Judge Price stepped in. "I've appointed an outside panel with subpoena authority," she said. "You won't write a single page." "Thank you," Maya said. Naomi's eyes tracked the bruise. "You should go home." "In a bit, I'd like to issue a written order tonight, clean up what I said, set timelines, name names." Naomi smiled with half her mouth. "We've gotten too fast. Speed is not justice. It's logistics." Maya breathed a small, almost laugh. "We fell in love with calendars and forgot the faces." "That's the line," Naomi said. "Put it in the order." She paused at the door. "Proud of you, and proud of this building today." Maya stood, returned to chambers. The order wrote itself, then didn't, then did. Plain words, short sentences, no adverbs. Deadlines people would cuss and then thank her for. Names to tasks. A ledger of responsibility. Copies to places where paper still matters. She signed. The pen scratched like a tiny saw. Her phone buzzed. Samira's voice note. "Hey Mom, I know you're okay because you get okay on purpose, but I'm still coming by after seminar with soup. Don't argue. Also, you once said judges mostly listen. You did that today, and then you made the room hear itself. Proud of you. Love you." Maya let the sound sit in her chest. She widened the picture. The rookie's statement, Raphael's careful hands, a grandmother's cookies, Pierce's copper memo, Naomi's hand on the pew. A map of accountability drawn by people who could have looked away and didn't. In the hallway, Andre was waiting. Part of the job no one trains you for, knowing when to stay. "Boss," he said softly, sliding into the old nickname. "You want an escort to the garage?" "Yes," she said. "And Andre? Keep an eye on the bulletin boards this week. Folks are going to post things they feel. Some of it will be hope. Some of it will be ugly. We'll answer the first with work and the second with sunlight." They moved through corridors that had watched the day change itself. On the landing, a small crowd gathered at the bronze dedication plaque. Courthouse lifers and first-timers, reading names like prayers and adding a new one under their breath that wouldn't be, etched in metal, but in policy, habit, practice. As the door to the stairwell swung, Maya caught one last slice of the lobby. Imani answering a final question with a steady hand. Raphael handing sealed envelopes to a courier who signed twice. Pierce walking fast with purpose that felt like penance. A child craning over a velvet rope, eyes wide as if the room itself had done a magic trick. In the garage, the air smelled like rubber and rain that hadn't fallen yet. Andre scanned corners with the ancient instinct that keeps good men paid too little alive. The car chirped, obedient. "Tomorrow," Andre said, opening her door, "it all starts again." "Good," Maya said. "That's how change sticks." She slid into the driver's seat. The bruise tugged as she reached for the seatbelt. She let it. The engine hummed. A jazz station rose, restless and tender. She eased the car into the lane and followed painted arrows toward evening. By the time she turned onto Market Street, the city had put on its blue. Philly breathed. A bus sighed. A kid on a stoop practiced a crossover in headphones too big for his ears. In the rear view, the courthouse stood square. A ribcage of stone around a heart trying to beat right. The phone buzzed again. Samira's coda. "Also, Mom, don't forget to eat." Maya smiled at the windshield. "Copy," she said to no one and everyone. "Working on it." Behind her, as the taillights faded, a custodian taped a temporary printout outside the main doors, so folks walking in at dawn would see it first. Notice, Evidence Preservation Order. In effect, all devices, all feeds, all hands. Underneath, in smaller letters that weren't official but mattered anyway, someone had added with a pen, "We saw, we recorded, we remember." The night settled. Not peace, not yet, but a promise made out loud. And promises in this building have a way of becoming rules. By winter, the bruise was a memory, faint as smoke in the mirror. But the day on the steps had become something else. Paper rules and human habits, slowly shifting like a river taking a new channel. The courthouse breathed differently now, not louder, just steadier, as if the building had found its pulse and meant to keep it. On a Tuesday before dawn, Raphael wheeled a cart stacked with black Pelican cases into a training room that used to serve stale muffins and now served accountability. He lined the cases up like altars, popped each latch, and spoke to a dozen officers who came braced for lecture and left, most days, with a map. "Good morning," he said, too dry to be a joke. "Today we're going to learn how to save your future." He held up a body camera, and the room stopped shuffling. This little thing doesn't care how tired you are. Doesn't care if your angle is right or your story is good. It cares about light and time. Treat it like a partner who tells the truth even when you don't want it to, because the truth is going to court with or without you. He clicked through cloud mirroring diagrams, redundant servers, salted hashes, audit trails that lit up if anyone breathed wrong near a file. A sergeant raised a hand. "So if a camera malfunctions, you still got us?" Raphael smiled without sweetness, especially then. Across the hall, glass-walled conference room, Caroline Pierce ran a meeting that felt more like confession than command. A whiteboard tangled with names and case numbers, colored dots for matters touched by Reynolds, Grady, Chen. Some pulled from the docket, others reopened, files thick with affidavits that had lived too long in bottom drawers. "We're not doing this to look righteous," Pierce said. "Wait." Voice even, humility showing like new muscle. "We're doing it because integrity is the job. If a conviction can't stand without a lie, it won't stand. If you think winning is the metric, you're in the wrong office." She wrote 2 words in block letters, confirmation bias. These two ruined more cases than any defense brief I've seen. You will ask yourselves out loud, what would make me wrong here? And then you'll go find it. No one clapped. They wrote. Later that week, the first vacatur landed, an old drug case. The man who walked out didn't smile for cameras. He hugged his sister at the curb, hands shaking, and said, "I've been saying the same story. Now the building said it back." The rookie, the one who'd whispered open and shut, sat on a panel called Seeing Past Uniforms. He didn't speechify. I wrote the first sentence in my head before I saw anything. That's the part I'm changing. I still mess it up, but I catch myself quicker now. An old-timer snorted, then lifted a hand. "Okay, kid." "How?" "Count," the rookie said. "Before you talk, 1, 2, 3. That's where the truth fits." Amani's quarterly community briefings became standing room ritual. Church basements, rec centers, the library auditorium. She didn't bring fireworks. She brought charts, use of force trends, stops by zip code, complaint resolution times, a discipline matrix printed on cardstock like a menu finally admitting what kitchen it came from. "This isn't PR," she'd say, deadpan, laser pointer ticking like a second hand. "It's a report card. You don't have to like the grade. You get to demand the next one be better." Sometimes a grandmother blessed the room through a mic. We already knew the story. Now the story got numbers. Sometimes a teenager said he still didn't trust the badge. Imani. "Okay, keep looking. That's supervision." Andre kept the transcript from the steps 2 inches from his spare socks. On break, he opened to the page where the gavel struck and the room exhaled, read 3 lines, then shut it like air might steal it. The habit kept his hands from turning into fists. The DOJ oversight order arrived on paper thick enough to feel expensive, signatures bleeding blue into fibers. A federal monitor downtown, sure smile, clipped sentences, unblinking reports. The liaison unit complained in the locker room and complied on paper. Training rosters filled. Culture bearers took retirements that felt like prizes for quitting. The new discipline matrix made the math honest. Lie once, lose the career built on lies. The first officer decertified under the updated state law. Imani posted the notice like a school lottery result. No gloating, just the sentence that moved tectonic plates. Integrity standard not met. The building changed in small ways you could smell and big ways you could stand under. Signs at the perimeter, language tested by defense counsel and high schoolers, on public forum rights, on ID protocols that were more than mood. Security retraining added a sentence Raphael suggested and Maya insisted on. If you are about to touch someone, check if you are also touching the Constitution. Folks made fun of it, then said it out loud. And the saying did something to their hands. In March, City Council renamed the plaza outside the courthouse, Ellis Plaza. Bronze plaque, "On this ground, a record corrected itself. May we be worthy of such days." The dedication wasn't a parade, just a line of people on a cold morning, coffee steaming like ghosts, a choir humming. Maya spoke exactly 36 words. "We didn't win something permanent. We started behaving like the promises on the wall are alive." A child traced the letters like Braille. Not everything went smooth. Internal Affairs blew a deadline. Maya ordered them into court Friday at 4:30 p.m. The hour that means business. She read the rule book like scripture, then had them say aloud what the rule required. Faces red, voices tight. Later to Naomi, "We don't fix culture with scolding. We fix it with calendars and consequences." "You used to call that justice," Naomi said. "I still do," Maya answered. Reynolds pled. The Fardow's 242 count stuck. Years that look long on paper and longer off it. Judge Monroe listened without reward. "Regret is cheap," she said. "Accountability is a debt you pay in work and time." Grady pled later, bravado gone. Chen cooperated, apology public and imperfect, but a light for someone wondering if truth is survivable. Pierce's review produced letters that made defense lawyers weep in bathrooms, then square their shoulders. Old cases vacated, others stayed clean. The public dashboard. Launched. 6 tabs. Stops, force, complaints, discipline, outcomes, credibility, flags. Week 1, it crashed under clicks. Week 2, civics teachers assigned it like homework. Pick a metric, track a month, tell me a story about our city. Maya and Samira walked the plaza one Saturday, hats low, fingers threaded. You changed a building, Samira said. Buildings are easy, Maya said. We're changing habits. The good parts of the system are like muscles, Samira said. You found some that atrophied and made them do reps. Reps are boring. Reps make you strong. Also, I brought soup. They ate it in chambers, perched on file boxes, mother and daughter flanked by old photos. On the wall, a thrifted frame held a construction paper card from a child. Thank you for making rules fair. Underneath, the teacher had added, we learned about public forum. We used the steps as one. That night, Maya drafted an opinion in a small civil rights case no headline would chase. She wrote the facts like an apology to time and the law like a promise kept, carving through pretext to a sentence that would make a young lawyer someday feel the hinge click. She sent it with 2 notes. 1, check pinned sites. 2, add the line about habit. On the sidewalk below, a portable speaker braided voices on cold wind. We see you, we keep you. Not a chant, a hymn in street clothes. Signs, unseen black stories equals seen. Racism in America is not a headline, it's a habit. Break it. And a simple Black Lives Matter, corners soft from being held. Maya switched off the lamp and watched silhouettes. She thought of inbox words, grateful, angry, afraid, demanding, proof of life in a body politic numb too long. She thought of Reynolds's hands, Raphael's hands, and her own hands wrapped around a gavel that is only wood until someone gives it weight. Morning again. The training room filled. Raphael opened a case and held up a camera. Light and time, he said, and officers murmured it back. Across town, Pierce sent 5 more Giglio notices. At a charter school, a 9th grader asked, why did we accept malfunction for so long? No answer felt good. The teacher circled the question twice. Project, she said. At lunch, Andre found the rookie stirring soup he couldn't taste. Feels like I'm telling on my uncles, the rookie said, then smiled, shy. Feels like I'm telling for my kids. Keep telling, Andre said, and pressed a worn Tupperware into his palm, oatmeal raisin cookies. From a grandmother, for your pocket. The rookie blinked hard and took one, a ritual he hadn't earned yet, but might. Spring pushed in. The plaza warmed. A choir returned on a Sunday, unannounced, singing Mercy. A skateboard clicked. A toddler laughed, and 3 strangers smiled at once. Inside, Maya signed an administrative order adopting the compliance officer's recommendations. More cameras, better signs, fewer shadows to hide in. In the margins, she wrote the sentence she'd carried for months and circled it. Certain, not showy. Speed is logistics. Justice is attention. At closing time, she paused at her portrait like a mirror that doesn't owe you answers. The painter had given her eyes a little extra light. She didn't mind. She touched the faint echo of the bruise the way fingers remember a map long after roads are repaved. A private line for thin air. If you've ever been told to know your place, remember, you can make that place. The hallway stretched, long, bright, a little scuffed. Work waited. The kind that doesn't trend, doesn't clap, doesn't quit. She lifted the top file. Ordinary name hiding a life. She opened it. She read. She wrote. Outside, the plaque held the light. The city exhaled. The building listened. And the promise, in wood and steel and paper and people, kept its own time, steady as a heart that had decided to go on. Justice didn't come easy that day. It came bruised, trembling, and still choosing to stand. What happened on those courthouse steps wasn't just about one woman. It was about every voice ever silenced and every system ever forced to listen. Rate slow pitch first. If this story moved you, let it keep moving. Share it. Speak about it. Because the fight for fairness doesn't end when the gavel falls. It begins when we decide to care. Thank you for watching, and for standing where justice still needs witnesses.